Oh, good morning. Today we're having a look at the next Victrola the Ninth I am tinkering with. This one is an early 1915 model. The patent sticker actually says January 1st, 1915, serial number 173518G. And this machine was actually done over by somebody, not by me. A friend of mine found this at a flea market. It had been definitely refurbished at one time. Not recently. They didn't do a horrible job. Most of the original coloring is there. Looks like they just rubbed some shellac into it, which was very common at one time. You know, I'd say about 30, 40 years ago. People would do this. You know, they wouldn't strip and refinish a whole machine unless they had to, but they would rub some shellac into it to try to revitalize it. Nowadays, that's kind of frowned upon, but this was done. This machine is actually going to a friend of mine who wants to play records. He's been buying records for me at flea markets and so on, junk shops and whatnot. Or at least he was before the whole coronavirus thing hit. But what he wants to do is be able to play them himself, to test them, to have fun with them, so I am refurbishing this machine for him. And I've done a few of these already. This is probably a little bit earlier than the 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it's earlier than the 1916s and 17s. But generally the same. They didn't change it too much. 1915 was the first year that the 9 got the feet down here. You know, before that it was flat on the bottom. And it has, of course, the isolated horn since 1913, so that's not new. You can see, you know, there's your sticker in there, and no surprises down there. A few dust bunnies and some needles. This has the narrow tone arm. It's off at the moment for service, but does have that. Wouldn't get the fat tone arm until, when did they get that? 1919, I believe they got that. Late 1918 or 1919, they got the fat tone arm. Or was it 1920? I forget. But you'll be seeing one of those eventually, because that's the next in line to do. You know, somebody replaced the little felts here. They did what I often see a lot of times done on motors. They didn't actually service the whole motor. They might have cleaned it up a little bit. Not that there's anything wrong with the motor. Everything was good. It was playing. You know, the governor's in good shape. It's just greasy. These are the springs. The springs don't look too horrible. I've seen much, much worse than this. That's black graphite grease that's kind of dry, but I think somebody dripped some oil in there is what they did. They didn't pull the springs and properly clean them. They just sort of oiled them a little bit. And it wasn't enough because they're still thumping and bumping, because there's just not enough lubricant in there. If they had used grease, a light grease instead of oil, or maybe a heavier weight oil like STP Motor Lube or something like that, that might have been enough to carry it over, but I'm going to pull those out, clean them, properly grease them, put them back in, and that will be good enough. Here's something weird I did find that I'm not sure is factory, but probably isn't, but it might be because it looks correct. The crank handle is a little on the short side for this machine, and they put this adapter on it to give it an extra couple inches. But you notice something? That adapter does actually look like a Victor crank. So this could be a Victor modification of some kind. Maybe they ran out of the proper size cranks. I don't know. But I am going to put a regular... I have spare 9 cranks, so I'm going to put a regular crank in this one, because it's a little awkward to use this, and getting... This adapter blocks the motorboard when you tip it up. So you can't properly grease the machine unless you're holding the motorboard with one hand and greasing it with the other. So we're going to get rid of this because it's just long enough that it sticks out a little, you know, it'll stick out a little bit and catch the edge right here when you lift up the motorboard. So we're going to do away with that. Put that in my collection of Victrola oddities. And where's the parts here? These are not clean yet, obviously. And we have all the little motor bits. You can see the nasty grease they didn't clean off when they did the, I'm going to call it the half-assed motor service. This is not the way to service a Victrola motor. You know, if you're going to do it, you need to clean it properly. Not that this grease is hurting anything. It's not what's causing the thumping and bumping, but it's nasty. You want to get rid of this and make it look clean and presentable and, you know, halfway. You don't want to be touching things in there all the time and getting that crap all over you. Let's stick that out of the way. And the case is in pretty good shape. You can see little bits here and there where age got to it, which is normal. I don't want to... Still nice in there, they always are. And the 9 is, you know, they made, what, 650,000 of this machine? And with good reason, because this is a really nice machine to play records on. The 9 is. It's got a strong motor, which means it'll power through even a really nasty, worn out, you know, ground up record. Especially when the springs are more on the new side, it'll really power through it. You know, you got 2 spring powers. You can usually get easily 3 plays on original springs, sometimes 4. You know, they go quite a bit. Now the decal is still nice in there too. It's always nice under the lid because they're usually closed most of the time. Most people didn't leave these open. You can see the original finish looked like this, so they're not too far off on the refinish. And they got it pretty close. But like always, they didn't do under the lid, just on the outside. They wanted a machine that looked good. I don't think they were that concerned with playability because they did rebuild the reproducer. It has new gaskets in it, but it was very sloppily done. Either from inexperience or they just didn't care if it played or not. You know, they just wanted it to look good from a distance. You know, you look at, oh, yeah, that's cool. But they didn't really care if it played records. Or they didn't care if it played them well. I've run into this before with machines that were done by collectors 30, 40, 50 years ago. It seems that they were more interested. Maybe they had one machine they played a lot, and that one is the one they wanted to play well. But other ones seem to be display items. They only had to look good. You know, this is where you find things like rear isolator gaskets on the exhibitions, the big fat one. That's like made out of almost a hard plastic. You know, totally useless for playing records, destructive even. But it looks good. You know, for a display item, it's fine. If you're never going to play a record, who cares? It's fine. You know, that seems to be what some collectors cared about back then, more than actually playing the records on the machines. I like to do my machines up so that I can play records on them if I choose. I don't play records on every machine I own. That would be impossible. But I'd be doing nothing but swapping machines around constantly. But I make sure when I do them that if I want to play a record on there, I can play it, and it's going to play properly, and it's not going to destroy the records, which means a properly rebuilt reproducer. You know, at least in this case. Here, I'll get the reproducer out. A little awkward here because I got it in the box, but let's see if I can open this case one-handed without spilling the reproducers out. We don't want to do that. This is the one. You can see that the rubber gasket there, the tube gasket, has been replaced. It is definitely showing age. It's yellowed. It's beginning to crack a little bit, but it's still pliable. But it's bulging out. It's not even properly in the slide. It's like, I'm guessing that they put the diaphragm in and then kind of squeeze the gasket around it from the outside. You're not supposed to do it that way. The gasket goes in. You take the body apart. The gasket goes in first, then the diaphragm. You have to properly space it so it's not touching the side of the reproducer. And then the inner gasket, which you can barely see in there, goes in. Then you clamp it together. You don't do it from the outside. That's not how it's done. Needle bar is slightly out of alignment. At least the back gasket here is soft. It's not solid hard rubber or plastic, so that much was correct. You know, so I'm not sure this. It's just soft from age, or it was soft to begin with. I'm not really sure, but it is a nice material, though. You know, whatever it is, it's not as hard as some I've seen. But I'll go through it. You know, I'll go through the whole thing again. I'm picky about my exhibition, all of my reproducers, but I'm picky about the exhibitions. What's wrong with me this morning? And there's a number 2 from another machine that needs to be done also. But, you know, stuff like that. You see stuff like that, the thing with the motor, the not bothering to pull the springs out. And I know a lot of people don't want to get involved with springs. It's a big job. It's intimidating if you've never done it before. It's definitely messy. You know, don't expect to come away clean doing springs. You're going to get dirty. So if they can avoid doing it, a lot of people do avoid it. You know, oh, I'm not going to play records on this anyway. As long as it spins, it's okay if it makes a little noise. All right. Not okay for me. I don't like hearing that rumbling, thumping, banging, you know. No, nobody wants to hear that. I don't want to hear that. You know, especially over when I'm playing a record. It just doesn't sound good. It's not good for the machine, the springs, the records, anything, really. Yeah, of course, if you don't want to do springs, you can always send them out. There are numerous people out there who do this, you know, full time. They'll pull the springs out, they'll inspect them, replace them if you want. You know, all it takes is money. That's all. You're going to spend money doing it because people do not do this for free. You know, it is kind of a pain, so expect you're going to pay. I think George Valima charges, what, $45 or something like that to do it, plus spring. You know, you have to send him the spring, of course. You know, if you get a new spring, new springs on a Victrola run anywhere from $50 to $100 a piece. So that'd be like either one to $200 for a machine like this, a Victrola VI. This particular spring is the older style, so it's got pear-shaped holes on either end. It's got an arbor in the center, you see, with a pear-shaped hole that clips around it, and it attaches to the spring barrel with a pin. There's a pin in the spring barrel, and the spring hooks to it. Do I have one here? I do. That's the pear-shaped hole I'm talking about. See if I can zoom in on that so you can see it. Not that. That. Looks just like that. The later ones have hooks like that, which is a lot easier to deal with. And best of all, with the hook style, it is impossible to put a spring in backwards. It's only going to hook in one direction every time. However, with these ones, it is possible to put a spring in backwards. It's been done. I mean, people have done it. So you have to take care to note the direction the spring is in. Notice this one goes like that, and this one goes, you know, same thing. You have to make sure when you put them back in, they're in the right direction. Otherwise, you're taking the whole thing apart, double the mess, and triple the aggravation. So you want to make sure with these, you know, when they get to the single spring barrel in 1917, late 1917, I think they did it, then they go to the hook style spring, and it eliminates this issue. Plus, it makes it easier to put in. You're not struggling to get the little pin into the pear-shaped hole and get it to hook on properly. And that's another thing. You have to make sure it's hooked on a little pin. Because if you stick the spring in there and it's not hooked on that pin, the spring's just going to spin. It may catch on there when you crank it up, or it may not. So, you know, you want to make sure you get it right. And this is the older style motor, which is, you know, obviously it's a 1915, so it's going to have this. This style stays until, I believe, 18? Yeah, I think it was 18, when they went to the single spring barrel. You can always tell these, you know, this configuration, and it's got the governors at an angle, you know, like this instead of like this, and so on. Good motor, nothing wrong with it. It's not better or worse than the later one, it's just different. Just different, that's all. All Victrola motors are good, all of them. They're well designed, they work well. They modified them mostly to make them easier to manufacture. And because they changed configurations on a machine somehow, and I needed to change it. But they're all good. It doesn't matter. On my Victor the 12th, you know, or the latest 1924 Victrola the 9th, they all work. They're all nice motors, all top quality. And all of them fairly easy to work with. I mean, there's nothing difficult about these. Victor had the best patents. And working on these is a joy. I mean, there's really nothing on here that's going to really be a serious pain. Unless, of course, you're not used to springs. I am. I've done hundreds of them, so I you know, this is nothing to me. You know, it's just a tedious job because it's a lot of scrubbing and mess and stinky solvents and everything else. But the actual doing of it, that's nothing. You know, I could sit there and, you know, zone out and still do it. Just remember to wear gloves, you know, wear heavy leather gloves. Springs can break when you're taking them out. It can happen. It's never happened to me, but I know it has the potential to happen. They're very old. They may be brittle. And if they snap, you don't want that to happen when you're holding them in your hands without gloves. Because spring steel will cut you up badly. And you'll be getting all that nasty crud into the wound. So wear protective gear. You know, wear long sleeve shirts, wear gloves. You know, expect you're going to get the gloves just about ruined with grease, but that's all right. That's, you know, keep a pair just for that. You know, that's all. Just have a special pair of leather gloves just for dealing with greasy, disgusting springs. That's it. What else? that's about it. You know, fairly common machine. You've seen me work on them in other videos. And let's close that so we don't accidentally knock it down later. The coffin top lid. It's a bit on the shiny side up here, but that's all right. These were highly polished when they were new. I mean, they had a very shiny look to them. It's aged. It gives them a duller look. Whereas, here we go. This one, for instance, you can see how that's kind of, that is the old style. That's the old finish. That's the original finish on there. You can see the alligatoring stuff like that. That's a 1923 machine, but you'll, 22 or 23, something like that. You'll see it, you know, eventually when I get to doing this one. But that's what an original finish looks like. That's normal. That'll clean up a little bit. You know, this dirt is ingrained in there that has to come out. It'll lighten up slightly, but that is, you know, this is actually fumed mahogany, while the other one is red mahogany. Two different style finishes. Okay. And that's it. That's what we got today. Victrola VI, 1915. Disassembled for cleaning and general spiffing up, I guess. All right.